Folks, one of the things that I think is important is to understand why things are the way they are. And to kind of elaborate a little bit on where I think there's this misunderstanding within the online left.
Mm-hmm. That's something that both Jess and I have been noticing.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pick on her, but I will say that the thing that sparked this was not just this, but during Demon Mama's most recent stream, she mentioned that, you know, a piece of paper doesn't matter, you know, essentially the argument being is that expertise or credentialing is meaningless. I assume in this case, meaningless to the person as far as their capabilities. And this is what I hold contention with, because I've heard other people make this claim. So this isn't me making critiques or me and Zena making critiques against Demon Mama. She's not really the focus of this. This is more sort of I don't know if it's a condemnation, but more of just an argument against that line of thinking, because I find it very troubling.
And I think leading to some potentially very harmful results.
Yeah.
Is where I see it going.
So, I don't know how many of you out there understand how credentialing works. There are definitely professions where I don't understand how their credentialing works. I can tell you how mine works. In order to have the license that I do, I had to go through roughly undergrad and graduate school. During graduate school, I had to do a graduate thesis, and I also had to do a year and a half of clinical work, working with the community and during internship, before they would ever let us out the door. Upon being let out of the door, I was once licensed, which, by the way, licensure required a whole bunch of background checks and fingerprinting and stuff like that. Once I was licensed, I was considered what's called a limited licensed professional counselor. During the next 2 to 3 years, I believe it was 3, I had to regularly see a supervisor who had been formally trained and had accreditation to be a supervisor for a number of hours, which I believe came to around 100. And what happened is after that was done, I then had to submit a form and showing this that then gave me my full license. This is ignoring the fact, by the way, that during the process of my time as limited licensed counselor, I had to then do a test. There's an LPC test you have to go through that is very, very rigorous and required a lot of study. The reason I'm mentioning this to you is because I think there is a problem on the online left with a contradiction we have. We tend to simultaneously hold in value expertise when it comes to scientific data, research, and the like. But when it comes to the expertise of specific people, we tend to tear them down, ignoring any of their credentialing or abilities. The example that I heard during Demon Mama's stream, and I've actually heard a number of people say this as well, was Jordan B. Peterson. The problem is that the things that Jordan B. Peterson is doing now aren't his degree. As far as he is, him and a person who is a 16-year-old at McDonald's have the same level of education, although probably 2 years less out of high school. My understanding is that he has a doctorate in psychology, with a focus on Jungian psychology, if my memory serves. Please correct me in chat if I am incorrect. What he's going around and doing is selling pseudo-philosophical nonsense about a Western society that never existed, and how we need to return to tradition, and using a lot of Nazi buzzwords. Well, I notice that Chad is getting lost in the weeds on this. I appreciate that. Understand that, well, yes, there are examples of people who have done harm, and there are examples of differences of how profession and jurisdiction work. I need you to follow along. The issue I have with this line of thinking is that when we, in a lot of ways, engage in this type of reductionism, what we're doing is essentially ignoring expertise. I find myself very uncomfortable with this, particularly because I actually think it's anti-intellectualism to ignore someone's degree and licensure. I just took you through the process of mine. These are all of the things I had to do to be a licensed professional counselor. Now, I realize that there are different programs out there, that there are different licensure requirements for different professions, and I realize some of these are easier or harder depending. But my point is that the reason these processes exist, the reason why these pieces of paper exist, right? My license and my degree is to represent the amount of time and effort I've put into that expertise. They exist for a purpose. They are there to not only show that skill and that ability, but also hold me accountable. The purpose of expertise is as well is that by claiming and showing through documentation by an accredited organization that I have this education, my behavior is held to a higher standard. Morningstar Council said in chat, "I am increasingly uncomfortable with treating expertise as authority. It is only ever used as abuse against me. I am sorry to hear that, Morningstar Council. I genuinely am. But that is not what we are talking about. Nowhere in here did I ever say that people who have expertise are authorities. I don't even know where this line of thinking came from, but I find it abominable. To me, when expertise is treated as authority, what it is someone using their accreditation and the responsibility as a way to have a power grab and causing harm. I want to take a minute before I continue on to see if you want to add anything.
No, just going down about the same line of thinking I am.
Yeah.
And again, undue power grabs are not great. So.
Yeah. So, me being someone with an expertise, right? Training in Zen, training in, psychology and counseling. Does not give me authority over you. What it should do, ideally, is it should add weight to my words. But that doesn't mean my words are without critique, without
comprehension, especially if you are in a position that,
Well, my point with this is that I think the left sucks at this. I do. It really frustrates me. And it's not just one particular faction within the left. It seems to be something that's rampant, but it appears in different ways in different groups. I realize that there are many of us that ascribe to ideologies that on the left are immediately distrustful of hierarchy. My retort to that is, when did I ever fucking mention a hierarchy? I'm serious. When did I ever do this? This conflation between education and expertise and authority of power is really strange. Even now in chat, people are typing a lot of stuff about either the times they've been harmed or the ways in which these have been negatively used. And the thing is that this is absolutely nonsense. Chestburster in a can actually is on the right track. This is scientism. When you give these people authority, what you're doing is creating a sort of a pseudo-religious interaction with them, that science and thus scientists are infallible. That's scientism. That's not science. That's just a religion by any other name, and you're engaging in it when you believe that someone has authority over you for that. This is why we empower you when you go to a therapist to tell them what you need and want.
And if you aren't comprehending anything, no, get the fucking answers.
The idea that 8 to 9 years of my life before getting out of education and then going through the licensure process of both limited license, and on top of that going through, national certification, all of those things together are somehow meaningless is absolutely inexcusable. It is uncomfortable for me to interact in these spaces sometimes because there is such an anti-intellectual vibe to it. And again, I'm not calling out anyone specifically. This has been a long-standing thing that has bothered me. It was only through that one stream that I watched that I finally got language around it. Expertise matters, but it doesn't matter because it gives someone power. This is a bit of a tangent, but follow me on this. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I don't ascribe to anarchism is a lot of times when I see people who identify as anarchs, what they tend to do is they tend to focus exclusively on this idea of getting rid of the state, and they're very, very skeptical of power, which I agree. I can get behind these things. Where I fall off is that where power comes from and how that functions is where I think we differ. Now, I'm not super incredibly versed in anarchist theory, so I apologize if I'm fucking anything up, but I really need you guys to understand this. Human beings have a natural desire to want power over one another. This is demonstrably and observably true. This is why toxic relationships happen. This is why abusive situations like teachers and students happen. This is why all of these different situations occur, because we either see power in situations where there is none, project power into situations where there may not be any, or, and this is the big one, seek power. This is actually one of Nietzsche's critiques that I think people get wrong, because again, I'm not sure whether it was him or his sister, and there's a lot of weird shit around it. But the idea, thus spoke Zarathustra, this grab of power, this seems to be a thing. People want power. They want to feel safe because safety comes from having power over your environment, power over the things around you. But the reality is we have power over nothing. We are on a mud ball that somehow spawned life, flying through the cosmos in a universe we do not fucking understand. Do you get that? We are on the fucking arm of from what I can tell, a relatively small galaxy surrounding a supermassive black hole. What fucking power do you possibly have? And this idea that we need to take down the state, or we need to take down the billionaires, I think we need to start really at basics. What is it to want power, and why does this seem to be so fundamental to the human experience? Why is it that every single liberator eventually becomes a benevolent dictator and eventually becomes the enemy? Why is it we see the same crap happening again and again, literally called out in the Dark Knight? Remember? You either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Honestly, psychosocialism, if you want my honest opinion, is it innate or is it something that's socialized? I'll be really clear. I actually think it might be something inherent to us, built around our fears and our insecurities and our desire for safety. We're talking baseline Maslow hierarchy of needs. Why do I think this? Because there's power grabs in every system. Why do you think our systems are always organized around power? They've gotten more sophisticated. The people who have power are now more restrained theoretically, right? We don't have god kings anymore. We don't have kings. We don't have necessarily people who are, by definition, above us because they just happen to be, but we still have classes. We still have, hunter-gatherer societies even had this to some level. This feels fundamental. So when you're talking to me about the notion of like getting rid of the state, getting rid of these things, or ignoring people's expertise because you don't like the piece of paper they have, that feels really fucked. Because what I actually think that is that it's actually a bit of a straw man, and I think it's a power grab. Let me explain. So by ignoring my piece of paper, without actually looking at my words or the value of those words or the positive effect those words have, what you essentially are doing is trying to invalidate my capabilities. People ignore Jordan B. Peterson's degree because it's inconvenient to calling him out. But the fact is, he's not doing psychology. In fact, he's not done any private practice to my knowledge, at least as far as I can tell, and he's not even a good professor, because again, psychology programs don't teach you how to be good teachers. You feel me? Like, seriously. So they invalidate it as a method of not only invalidating their argument, this weird sort of backward ad hominem straw man thing, but then they ignore that. By ignoring that expertise, regardless of how actually accurate or useful I am, what they're trying to do is hold power over me. Think about it. Back when we dealt with the Lily Orchard situation, and yes, I know this will get back to Lily. I don't care. Back when we dealt with the Lily Orchard situation, one of her dumbass retorts was and I'm very clear on this, calling me a fake armchair psychologist and that I had diagnosed her. Now, the latter part is a lie.
Yup.
But the former is actually much more complicated, because what she's doing there is, by talking to her followers and ignoring my degree, because she can't see it in front of her, and even if she did, she would just say it's invalid, because that's the fucking goalpost move, right? If I was to pull out my fucking degree from my graduate program and my licensure, do you think these people would accept it? No. Because they'll just move the fucking goalpost. What's happening there is a very strong desire to hold power. In this case, power in the sense that if you want to feel morally and socially superior to another person, then you need to cut down the things that give them perceived threat to you. So what is that? Their degree. Because there is an inane knowledge, or not knowledge, but a belief in our society, because I don't think it's a knowledge. I don't think it's something people know. They just intuit, and then it's dumb, because, again, fallacy of intuition. They intuit this idea that if you acknowledge someone's credentialing, you're buying, I don't know, into class structures, you're buying into some sort of superiority. But again, I go back to what I said earlier. My expertise doesn't make me better than you. It doesn't give me power over you. What the fuck are we even talking about right now? And I see countless leftists do this. Demon Mama's statement, if I can be honest, was the most benign. I've heard far worse, and it is always circumstantial. They will absolutely hold up someone's degree when it's convenient to their argument, but the moment they need to cut someone down, they'll ignore it. Why are we engaging in anti-intellectualism? If you want to tell me someone's degree or license doesn't matter, you need to show me either A, demonstrably through their actions, and their actions need to be related to their degree, right, their actual license or credentialing, or you need to, at some level, show why the accrediting institution that gave them this is illegitimate. The one that gave me mine, that's the one that ran my program, KCREP, is a nationally recognized fucking organization that is ran by counselors. They are the ones that standardize all of the different programs around the country. If you have a KCREP, if you literally have a KCREP program, it streamlines the process of actually getting your license a little faster, because they don't have to go through and with a fine-tooth comb look through your program. Why? Because they know the things they want you to have in there. Thank you, Niana, for the Tier 2 subscription. The They said, very here for the good, hard chats about behavior of online lefties, rhetoric becoming thoughts, becoming behavior is an easy slope. True. The thing here is that I need us to really be better about this. And I'm sorry I'm doing all the talking. Please feel free to jump in if you need to.
No. Jess is super based.
But you guys, do you get this? Does this make fucking sense? Like, I don't care if you're the most the most hardcore fucking anarchist possible. You do understand that people's pieces of paper are based around years of their life, right? Like, if you want to actually cut down their arguments. Go against their arguments. Go against the things that they're saying. Point out that Jordan B. Peterson isn't doing anything related to psychology. He's doing basic life coaching and basically just doing Nazi dog whistles. None of this has to do with his degree. I am more educated on philosophy than he is. I need you guys to understand this. If you don't like something I say or you disagree with me on something clinical, fine. Cool. We're gonna have disagreements. But don't act like anti-intellectuals. Don't do this nonsense where you try to cut down people based on their, like, the years of life they've spent on this. When I go after Sasha Ayad, I know what I'm doing. When I say that Sasha Ayad is a danger to kids, it is because she touts a theory that has no empirical hold to it other than a badly written study. She is violating our code of ethics. I can show you exactly where, and I did in the videos about her. But she still shows up on all these right-leaning programs talking, and her little podcast talking about how rapid-onset gender dysphoria must be real, and people buy it because this is the other problem. Fallacy of false authority. Sometimes people will then name the person as the authority, either being afraid of them, like people have mentioned in chat, being harmed and damaged, or they'll just give up the ghost and not critique these people. She's touting a fake theory, a fake idea to scare parents into stopping their kids from being who they are. This is the thing that I really need people to understand. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not trying to harm anybody. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. But I want to make it really clear that this stuff matters. The reason why I hold counselors and other therapists to such a high degree, to such a high standard, is because I want the shitty ones out of my profession. Because they do nothing but harm. Nothing about me in any of my work gives me authority over you. I am not trying to have power here. And so I need us to change our language on this stuff. We need to actually go after people's arguments, not just dismiss them. Not just pretend that the pieces of paper they've gotten are meaningless. If that's from a non-accredited organization, if they just got it from a fucking website, sure, ignore it. Morningstar Council said, I don't understand the argument even is that you're attacking. You can't attack someone who's swinging their degree around to assert authority. Morningstar Council, have you listened to any of this? I love you, but what the hell are you saying? That, let me restate it because clearly it's not being heard. My argument is that when somebody has some sort of accredited expertise, rather than going the anti-intellectual route and trying to just ignore their piece of paper because of past trauma or because of nonsense, because it's easier just to deflect from them, it is better to attack their arguments or point out that they are out of their depth in a different area. The example given was Jordan B. Peterson. Jordan B. Peterson talks a lot of stupid shit about a lot of dumb things that have nothing to do with his degree. So we can attack his arguments and his lack of expertise there. If he actually starts teaching us about Jung and Jungian psychology, yeah, that's a different discussion. If he starts saying things that are demonstrably false, then we point those out. But this anti-intellectual tendency to just dismiss these is either, I think, a trauma response or just anti-intellectualism. So the argument that I'm attacking is that, one, no one with expertise has authority over you. That's not how this works. So drop the term authority, because to be honest, I think people are fixating. But to further state this, to answer the more direct, sort of indirect question you're asking, if someone is using their degree to try to assert power over you, you should get away from that person. There is a difference between bringing up your expertise in a situation as a means by which to make it clear why and how you know these things. That doesn't make it a shield. That doesn't make them get a pass. But again, if I speak up about something and some undergrad speaks up about something, the likelihood of one of us being right is much higher. This stuff is complicated. And this idea that these people have authority over you isn't true. And if you're trying to get away from that supposed authority, or the authority that they're trying to put out there because of their desire for power, ignoring their expertise is not the way to do it. In fact, it is absolutely a way to just look like an idiot. Morningstar Council said, if someone's making stupid arguments, then it isn't their degree they're swinging around meaningless. What's wrong with that? How is that anti-intellectual? What? Are their arguments, for the first and foremost, are they related to their actual expertise or not? Why are you focusing on this swinging around their degree thing? I don't understand the fixation. I will stay on this as long as possible because I don't understand the actual issue here. If someone is making dumb arguments, ask yourself first, are they within their own expertise? 1. 2, if they are within their own expertise, then you have to double check them and you're still allowed to go against them. You don't just get to immediately ignore that expertise.
That expertise and that education still happened. It still took place, I think, is the idea here. Right? You can still be like, no, we have better data, we have better understanding. Here, let me actually prove to you how you are wrong. You will get much further if you actually go after the argument and not just, their background, a thing that happened in the past, right? Like, it brought them there, but in that moment, you need to deal with the argument.
And if their argument has nothing to do with their expertise, then point out when it's a fallacy of false authority. Jordan B. Peterson swings around his doctor everywhere, but to be perfectly frank, it has no real validity in any other circumstance. He just gets it as sort of a social title because he finished a doctorate. I don't see how this is unclear. I feel like I've been really clear on this.
And we literally do talk on this channel when there are professionals in their field, which...
And how is it anti-intellectual? I'll answer that question directly. By ignoring the entire the time they've put into this and the actual meaning behind those credentialings. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was responding. If you're stuck with somebody that's fucking up, okay, doing anti-trans stuff, we literally advocate for reporting them to their licensure. That is what you do. You report those fuckers.
Yeah, if you've been harmed by somebody who had a degree and is doing that stuff, then what you do is you either file a grievance, you talk to their boss.
Yep.
If you think like your counselor or your therapist or your psychiatrist or whoever,
or your doctor or anyone else,
then you seek higher people and you deal with it.
Yep.
I'm not saying the credentialing and the education process is perfect by any means. None. Sometimes people get through because they know how to actually regurgitate the data without actually doing the thing. Now, the nice thing about a clinical program like mine is when you're sitting there on one-way glass and the frickin' professors can watch you in a session, those people get usually weeded out. There are people who went through almost their entire counseling degree who got dropped from the program. Niana, I understand that, but if people don't empower themselves, what are we to do? It feels like you're making excuses. I'm sorry, but it really does.
Yeah, I don't
The
think
whole
those
point of this
entire
argument-
situations really fall into this.
Yeah, honestly, to be honest, the ignoring of people's expertise sounds very Karen-ish. I'm sorry, it just does. Yeah, ContraPoints demonstrably shows her intelligence and her capabilities in her videos without ever once mentioning her degree in philosophy. Yeah, Vosh brings up his bachelor's often, but that's because he's actively good at going over the statistics and brings them up during his arguments. It's not that those are true, it's that sometimes people will try to use false statistics or misinterpret statistics that is relevant to his field. So, I want to be clear on this, is that if you don't like something I say, and it's a matter of opinion or whatnot, that's fine. You can make arguments and deal with that. But to invalidate my degree or anyone else's just offhand because you don't like them or you don't like their arguments, to me seems really gross. Because what it shows me is you have no idea what that person had to go through for that. You actually have no knowledge of how these systems function. And because of your ignorance, it's just easier to pull the anti-intellectual route. Because I'm going to be really frank, you're doing the same thing conservatives do. When you sit there and say that their degree doesn't matter, you're saying the same thing that conservatives do when they ignore climate change scientists. Well, scientists don't know what they're talking about COVID, about climate change. It's the same thing. This stuff is important. You may not like my argument here, but to me, I like those organizations, not as their political entities, but in what they represent. The idea that there is somebody who has to be holding you accountable. I think that's important in professional fields, especially professional fields where you're working with people.
Mm-hmm.
The same expertise that gives me the ability to talk about certain things, it also gives me the ability, or it also gives the responsibility that I have to honor that code of ethics. Are there problems? Sure. I'm not disagreeing with that. And are there people who've been abused by therapists and psychiatrists and like? Yes, I've worked with many of them, actually. It sucks. I hate it. Because every time it's another person who is good at regurgitating data, but because their fucking supervisors or someone else was asleep at the damn wheel, we now have this person out here who has credentialing that shouldn't. I don't see how I'm unclear on this. Do you find your position of clinical agency to be a majority of position of client agent? Yes, absolutely. In fact, Wednesday's literally my boss. This is something we talk about all of the time, empowering clients to have the ability to have agency.
That's like core to the therapeutic alliance.
Correct. And as far as like the larger larger clinical spaces, to me, it really depends on a number of factors of whether or not they feel similarly. What led you to leave other clinics? I left my
really off topic.
Yeah, this feels
right
off
now.
topic. The answer to this is I left those other jobs because of ethical issues. Had nothing to do with this argument. That feels like a weird red herring.
So
here's my point. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave this here, but I need you to understand. There are better ways to do this. If you don't like someone's arguments, go after the arguments. But just deflecting and saying that their degree doesn't matter is unacceptable. It won't be acceptable in this community. If I see people say things like this, it's going to be a problem. If you see somebody, it's not to say that they're the authority on it. It doesn't mean that we don't get to argue with them. This isn't scientism. They're not some fucking priest. What it means is you go through and try to look at the arguments, and you take into consideration that their expertise, if they're in that particular field, does have weight. That doesn't mean they don't have biases, doesn't mean they're things. But again, you have to ride that line of, can you argue with somebody without invalidating that expertise? Can you go through that without just saying, oh, it's just a piece of paper? Because it's not. If you say that about me, we have a problem. I'll see you in the next one. Go team. Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm okay. I had a little bit there, but that's okay.
Oh, it's up at the end?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We didn't really get to the part where, like, the demonstrable effects of this.
Which part?
We need people to have expertise in our movements is the big one for me. That climate change.
I'll just add this on as a bonus.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Real quick, guys. Sorry, I screwed up and ended the segment too quickly, so this is going to be a bonus at the end. Zena, go.
The really cranky and irritating part for me is that we absolutely need people with the expertise in our movements. We have to have them. There is no fucking way that every rando on the internet, or even myself, can be highly educated in the specialized fields that we need them to be educated in. We need those people. We need to be a movement that will attract professionals from all sorts of climate change, fields, right? There are so many different fields in that, even, right? And so many different thought processes. We need professionals in our movements, and we need to give them, the due diligence that they've got expertise and actually hear that stuff out with weight. All right. When I see in somebody's chat somebody going like, "Hey, my therapist got mad because my speech pathologist doesn't have a piece of paper." No. You need your speech pathologist for voice training to be credentialed. All right? You need people that work with you in a professional capacity to be credentialed. That's a thing. All right? Yeah, I don't like every doctor that I've been to, but I do still need them all to be credentialed. That's a thing that needs to be in place.
Because at least to some degree, the credentialing represents not only their education, but it's also the way you bind them if they fuck up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You guys keep thinking credentialing is power. It's not. It comes with a lot of responsibility because that credentialing can be taken away.
Yep.
So, thanks for adding that, Kiss.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See you later.
Mm-hmm.
If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.